Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. Learn more at filmmakeru.com and follow us on Twitter at filmmakeru_u. And of course, on our YouTube channel, hit subscribe and make sure to check off the bell. Every week, we interview film professionals to discuss their work, and this is made possible by our sponsors, OWC. For more information on how they can assist you in your filmmaking needs, go to owcdigital.com. Now, of course, this week I'm joined by editor Rosanne Tan, whose work includes Mr. Robot, Homecoming, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, among so many other great, amazing projects. Welcome to the show, Rosanne.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I guess my first question, you mentioned it a bit, that you worked through the pandemic. So how did the pandemic impact you in the editing process, and how did you make that did you work from home, or how did you make that transition if you did?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. The minute we were actually on location at the time, so the minute everything was kind of shutting down, and it was kind of like the unknown. Are we going to stop? Are we going to keep working? And the good thing about the producers on Marvel was they basically said, no, we're going to figure things out. And so we went back home because I flew back from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And getting on a plane also was kind of like, what's happening? But we got back, and it was meetings every day, kind of like to figure out how we're going to get the systems to your house and the remote systems. And basically, once it was set up within a couple of weeks, and we had meetings kind of discussing how we're going to continue. And by that point, we had many months of dailies in the can. So we basically just, okay, let's fine tune things now. Let's work until we can figure out when. Again, it was a lot of the unknown. Figure out when we can when production starts back up again. But until then, let's keep working. So once they set the remote systems up at my house, it was just, okay, we worked with producers, and we kind of, and I had a taste of a little bit of working on Clearview and Evercast right before the lockdown, even in Atlanta, because sometimes the director, Kari Skoglund, couldn't come in. And she would be kind of, within like an hour and a half away. So the best thing to make use of the time was work remote. So we were kind of doing that, and basically kind of set that up. And then we kept working on the stuff that was shot, and work on fine tuning VFX, and had meetings, and then months went by, and we would have many sessions via Clearview or Evercast, and that was very valuable. And I think everybody was able to see that there is a way to work from home. And also, I think before people were worried about security, but I think the people who do care will not ever share anything, and just, they just want to keep working. And that was really great because I got the chance to be home with my family, and then keep working away, and still connect with people through Zoom and the many meetings, and then basically meetings, Clearview, and then before you know it, it's 15 hours past or 12 hours past, and then you do that every day. So it was great to be able to work remote.
Now, are you still remote? Because I noticed you have some movie posters, and it might be a bit weird if you movie posters in the background.
Yeah, I think for my current project, it was great that to be able to have a hybrid thing, because we're still in the pandemic, right? We're not out of it yet. And it's great to have that option. And I do go in, and it's really safe, and everybody, has their masks on, and even, at the beginning for Falcon, we would go in, and my assistant would be in her room, and we would all be in our individual rooms, and we kind of function that way and have more Zoom meetings. I think last year alone was just nonstop Zoom meetings and just working with your Avid, and then even going in, you kind of don't see people in person. You just kind of work it that way,
Wow.
But again, I love that the option came up to work from home, because now it's like, well, I hope they continue it. I don't know if most producers or studio will continue that, but I hope that they give editors that option.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it would be cheaper to a certain extent, because they're no longer paying for the suite. You're at your place. Maybe just rent a space to demo or something.
Yeah, and then I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the collaboration in person too, and it's much faster that way. I think it's just, I would love a hybrid situation. I don't know if that, again, maybe that doesn't save money, because you still have to have a room ready for whenever editors want to come in. But I think the one thing I didn't get to do much when I worked a lot and at an office is see my family. I have a 3-year-old son, and I think when I came back from lockdown and he was 2, and I got to see him grow up while I was working, and sometimes he was kind of working beside me playing toys while I'm working. and I'm grateful that the producers who are working with me kind of like, they understood that, a 2-year-old can come into the picture and they're fine with it.
Wow. And so like, I can't imagine, because I had a 3-year-old who just became 4. So I can't imagine trying to cut like the Winter Soldier fight scenes and having a little kid be like,
yeah, I mean,
like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, and there are days where, you're not working with the producers or the director, and I'm able to work later, and that's best because it's quiet. And my son's going to be 4 this year, so yeah, there's that whole toddler thing. And you just work, and the great thing is my husband's really helpful of like anytime we have meetings or I have a really intense few hours that I need to kind of just have a quiet space. We're really great about working together on that. So.
Good. Now you actually started in like you were doing a lot of online editing and assisting in online editing. Why did you make the change from that to the editing editing chair?
Well, I've always wanted to do narrative storytelling and narrative editing. And when you're in college and you meet people who are like, okay, well, we can get like, I can submit you to try out in this post-production facility. And then I thought, okay, you know what, let's get started. So, and then I worked in reality, and then I'm like, how do I kind of jump over to scripted? And then you just keep meeting people. And then at some point you just keep working, and you're hoping for that chance to kind of go over, but then you find out that, oh, it's really hard to make that move from, especially in online editing, because we were just basically, I was at a place where we would get projects and you would get reality shows, you would do a bunch of them. And, at that time we were digitizing tapes. And oh my, I can remember now just digitizing, you would pop tapes in, like I would be working 9 hours to digitize for one show. And you would basically pop in like mini DVDs, and it would be, the Umatics, the what is it, the green, the little bright green tapes. That's just so slow. IMAX.
Yeah.
I think IMAX. Yeah, they had those tapes. And I mean, you just get through it, and you keep, and I kept my dream alive. And I just, every time I saw like a trailer come in or a movie come in, I'm like, oh man, I still want to do that. And so you just, and then I met some people that I'm like, hey, if you want to, you need to leave that world and kind of take a chance. And then that's what I did. I started networking more, and I did before, but I was in the wrong networking circle, because if you kept meeting the reality and posts and online, then you would kind of not, meet the narrative editors. So, and then that's how I slowly kind of moved out of that and learn. And I think you have to be open and be patient, because nothing's going to happen right away. So I just met with people, and then like, hey, can I shadow you? And that's how it happened. Just again, kept doing that over the years. So.
Well, I was going to ask you about Project Runway, just, but I'll stay away from the reality shows, because I'm sure you're glad.
I mean, that was many years ago, and I mean, that was such a great show. Even and I worked on a lot of various different shows, and Project Runway was one of the big and fun ones. And to be an online editor on that, and I was much younger, and I look young now, and I remember I would be an online editor and some sessions, and people would come in and go, where's the editor? I'm like, and those were the days where I feel like things took longer because of tape and getting things digitized. And then also there weren't that many women in the field, and still, we're kind of getting better in that in all the areas. But seeing a young, and at that time I looked much younger, and people are like, okay, where's your editor? And you just kind of go through it and just, hey, I can prove to you that I know what I'm doing. And then you work through it. And Project Runway was actually really fun. And Models of the Runway, I did that too. So.
Yeah. Oh, the first season sort of spin-off?
Yeah, it was like, I was on the online editing side. So the finishing, obviously, I didn't do the actual editing. And yeah, it was one of those where the spin-off was fun. And again, it's just seeing all the designs, right? It's a competition show. And then actually wow, this is fun. And you know, and I also over the years, back then I got to work on the Ultimate Fighter TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was into, you know, martial arts and that it was so much fun just to, and then you would go with the crew to Vegas to watch UFC fights. And that was the start of it. So yeah, and that was, you know, the non-narrative side.
Now, you talked about you wanted to get into storytelling. And one of the things, sometimes when I interview editors, it can be a little frustrating because you'll ask them like, "How did you tackle this story element?" And they're usually like, "Oh, it's in the script," you know. So, what can you tell me? Where do you see the script ending and the editor taking over as the storyteller?
You know, yes, it's in the script and it's a lot of it is shot, but you know, nothing is how it's never perfect. It's a total collaboration. And over the years, as I came up in that world, I was an assistant editor and I learned from a lot of wonderful editors and then working with them and seeing the process. And then when I became an editor, it was just, you know, just like story matters, right? Story matters a lot. And then nothing is what how it comes in. So you work it out, and then when you actually work with the director or the showrunner, and then they tell you, well, I was hoping, you know, to go this direction, and then you kind of work it out and try to either problem solve when you if you don't have the footage, or just make things happen. Because a lot of times they don't want you to know what's they want a cold perspective of how it should be, what you're seeing from the footage and what you're getting in and what you make of it. And then when they come in, they're like, oh, this is in the right direction, but I like to, you know, tweak some performances that I prefer, or some shots that like, ooh, they don't like. And again, it's a collaboration, you work through that. And yeah, I find that it's never just perfect what's on paper and what's shot. And I think a show like Mr. Robot or Homecoming, Sam Esmail really depends on their editor. And it's like such a collaboration of, and he wants to see what I come up with, you know, mm-hmm. what music I'm going to try with it, and a lot of times sound design changes a scene and kind of what Elliot Alderson's going through in the scene. And it's really a lot of creative editing that I really like. And that was very fun. And especially when things aren't as black and white, from script to, you know, to what's on the dailies and what finally ends up in editing. So.
Well, and you talked about the importance of sound. So how much do you, because, you know, like I've seen some editors' timelines and it's just, they've done a whole sound design. And I see others who are like, I let my assistant do it. And so how do you like to tackle sound as an editor?
Oh, I think sound and music so important to tell the story. I feel like if it's lacking or it's missing, I feel like, you know, people can bump on things, especially when producers or directors, they're trying to see their full vision, and then you get something and then you're like, that could have been just fixed with better sound. And I'm all about that. I think you know, my assistant editors would laugh at me because I would fill up all the tracks. I think you know, it was that one episode where it was just a oneer. I mean, it feels like I didn't do any editing, but there was editing in there. It was basically, if you look at my timeline on that, I have filled up everything and I had to mix things down and have my assistant editor mix things down. And again, we would work through it, and just, you need the sound and music to tell the story. And even still now, I love sound design. And yeah, I would basically, as a collaborative process, right? There's not enough time. So I would have my assistant editor and Caroline Wang, who's my current assistant editor. And I had Zach Dame, who was right before her. And they both know how much I care. And they basically will do a pass, and then I would get it back, and then I would give notes and spot. And then I would also do that as well once I finished the picture. And a lot of times, you know, there are certain things that are not just black and white with sound. You want to kind of do some sound design, or what if you get into someone's head, you want to add drone and how music comes in, then I would totally be really hands-on with that. Same with music. So I like music editing. So
you must have a huge sound library at this point that you just take with you everywhere.
Yeah, and we try to, but then once you get into, you know, from show to show, you find that they have an intensive library too. So you kind of just, you know, go with the flow and work with what they have too. So, but I do like certain specific ones that I use, you know, constantly, just to, okay, here's how I get into something. And also it changes over time, right? It gets better. And then I find more tools that I have, and it's like, oh, I can do it this way, not this way, but let's, you know, it's interesting. It's experiments.
Well, you mentioned there was editing in the one shot film episode. So how would you describe, like, what is your role in that? I'm assuming you did stitching for the
I mean, I
series.
did some really bad stitching, and then my assistant editor Zach was really great at. He had the skills to actually he'll take it out, and and it was bumping anybody if you saw
Yeah.
like this floating shot. So I did that, and then I'm like, ugh, can you just smooth it out? And then he's wonderful in After Effects, so he took that and he kind of did a temp stitch on it, and then put it, and we'll import it. And on Mr. Robot, we didn't have something called the post biz team that that I'm working with, or I work with at Marvel.
Yeah.
And it's you just do what you can, and then to tell that story. And then when Sam came in, there were things where, okay, these weren't planned, but we want to change takes in. And it was great to now, okay, when the camera was panning, change to take here, or when the camera would do like a crazy tilt, then we would add another thing there. So it was a lot of shots like that. And in that specific episode, I think when we got to the robot main title, and there's like this shot, it was like actually 3 shots in there, and was not planned, because we had to have it's a continuity of the actors, because it is so hard to have the actors come in at a certain time and have Elliot then come in, so it was great. I mean, the VFX team finally, of course, did the finished product, but what was in my cut at one time, it's whatever Zach did, and it was still really good. It's just, obviously not finished product, but there were a lot of shots like that.
Wow. Now, is there a scene or a moment that you've edited over the last couple of years that that was difficult to overcome any of the troubles, but you were able to do it, and it's something you're proud of now?
Yeah, I have a few of those. I think one, definitely the Mr. Robot. It was I mean, obviously every show or every project I have one favorite, one or two favorite things. And in Mr. Robot, it was the episode in this final season. It was the one with only 2 dialogue, like 2 lines at the beginning, at the end, and it was no dialogue in the whole entire show. It was really hard to tell a story without sound, well, not sound, but dialogue. And then you basically rely on shots and what Elliot's doing and what Darlene's doing, and then also with music and sound. So that's an episode that I was really proud of, because it's really hard. If you stay too long on something and it doesn't tell the story, I mean, you'll bore the audience. So that's something I'm really proud of. And on Homecoming, I think there's a whole medicine montage. I remember it was Sam had said, okay, I shot the opening montage or opening stuff. Did you get it yet? I'm like, I think, Zach's still prepping it. And then I would open it up, and the bin is filled with like hours and hours of footage of the medicine. And at that time I had worked, I don't know if you saw episode 4 of season 1. It was how the medicine was made. And basically the medicine being made was shot almost at the end. And then the package being delivered was shot right at the beginning. So I had to figure out a way to connect the music, and also now create a way to tell a story that's many hours of just medicine being made and not bore people. And so I was, again, just trying out split screens and how things move from here to here. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. That was pretty fun, and I hope he likes it. And it turns out that he did. And that was really, satisfying at the end. I remember just wanting to pull my hair out, because I'm like, how do I make this interesting? Because this is literally just people in the lab and berries getting crushed, and how do you make that fun?
What's crazy is you look at, so like Breaking Bad came out, and everyone was talking about cinema or television being like the new cinema, or television pushing the boundaries. But then you see shows where it's like, we're going to have no dialogue or minimal dialogue.
Yeah.
And we're going to push it and push the storytelling craft. So when you're looking for shows to work on, what do you look for in the show?
I think for me is what interests me. And I growing up, I've watched a lot of dramas and action. And I think, for the longest time, I'm like, oh, how do I get into action? It's going to be so hard. And thankfully I did it with Falcon and Winter Soldier. But just moving up in the world and growing up, I love dramas and watching really unique dramas that aren't very conventional. And then when I after working with Mr. Robot, I'm like, and then there was Homecoming. It's like, oh, great. This is another unconventional drama. Nothing is very, you could try and experiment with things, and it's not just going to close-ups. You could stay on wides and staying on a shot. And it was that was wonderful. And then, I also did a lot of horror type shows, and that was fun too. It's like, growing up, you want to watch, you watch scary stuff, and you get to experiment and kind of cut and how do you scare someone, and The Shining is one of the movies that I love growing up, and I remember when I got to work with Kevin Williamson, that was so great, because I'm like, that guy created Scream, and then also working on Stalker, he wanted every intro to be like a mini horror movie, so that was really fun. And then finally, obviously many years later, and I got into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was incredible. I mean, I think I'm a fan at heart, and then watching I'm so great I got to work with Jeff Ford, and something that characters that he's worked and created over the years. So I want to do it justice, and so I would keep watching the movies and getting inspired by them, and then kind of just like, oh my God, okay, here we go, and how do I work it out? And also going back, one of the favorite scenes is episode 3 in Falcon, and it was the whole action between Sharon fighting, and then the whole spy drama-ish story inside the lab. So that was really fun too.
Now, so you talked about working with Jeff, and he's been working with Captain America for quite a while.
I mean, the Marvel world, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, for what is something, because you wanted to get into that world. So now that you're in it, what is something you didn't realize, or you wish you had known before entering that young editors coming in can sort of prepare for or know about before coming into an environment like that?
I mean, the most important thing is storytelling. Marvel cares so much about that. And I think everything else is just, okay, how do we tell the story? But second is the VFX. I think you can't learn that in any school just because you don't have the resources, or again, I didn't see the bells and whistles until I actually got into the Marvel world, and actually seeing how they work VFX, and how we would, for example, dailies come in, and then we would start kind of post-fizzing it. And that's insane, because in the past shows that I worked on, it was you would kind of just leave it for now and then kind of deal with it at the end. And so that's wonderful, in that they care about temping in things and putting backgrounds in. It's within a few days that you work with the post-viz team, and it's just to see if it's working, and that's really great. And I think it's hard to actually, for newcomers to learn that, because I don't think any school is going to go through that with a post-viz team. I think I learned that and especially working with Jeff Ford, I think he was able to like show us just, this is the process. And I mean, it changes over the years. And obviously technology has gotten way better, and it's only going to get better. And just learning from him. But ultimately, it's important how we, craft the characters and the story arc, keeping all that stuff kind of true to what MCU has introduced, and that was great. And I think, again, coming up, just learn to be a good editor as far as telling a story, and the tools will come later as you advance through the career. So
interesting. Now I have one last question I like to ask everyone I interview. Right now, we're just hopefully wrapping up this pandemic, but a lot of people have turned to streaming channels during the pandemic. Was there anything you discovered on the streaming services that you think people should check out?
I feel like because I was working through the pandemic, I would basically, right before going to bed, obviously this is the wrong choice to go to bed with after watching. It's those murder shows. And I would basically go through Netflix and Hulu and ESPN documentaries. I love documentaries, and I find that, I mean, kudos to the editors to cut documentaries. I mean, how do they find the footage? How do they make that and tell a great story? I think that was something that I would basically, before going to bed, and turn something on and then get hooked and then go, maybe one more or two more. I don't have a specific title because I watch so many, and then getting scared and then turning the lights on and my husband getting mad at me like, why do you have the lights on? Because I got scared from the murder shows. But there were so many, I think, during the lockdown last year, and I just kept going through them, and I think I I rewatch episodes of Seinfeld too. That was really fun, and but I think nothing new, just because I think people were watching a lot of repeats during the lockdown, right? Because until the industry opened up again, we were all just watching older stuff and watching movies. I think that was great too, just rewatching movies.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And that's it for this week. Be sure to check out filmmakeru.com for our latest courses, and follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. And on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button and click the notification so you can get our weekly videos. I want to thank Rosanne for joining me this week, and of course our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking needs. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.